So if you haven't heard the first part of the show, I've basically been talking about the possible playoff matchups, and the Penguins still probably about a 50-50 shot to play the Rangers, maybe a little bit more than that, depending on scheduling and how things go in the final 3 to 4 weeks of the regular season. But yeah, how they played against the Rangers has been very concerning. And I do have to say that that has surprised me because I thought coming into this 3 game series, if you will, at the end of the year against New York, 3 games in 10 days, I thought we'd see the Penguins generate more chances than they have in this series. Igor Shesterkin certainly has been good. Even in the game the Penguins won against the Rangers this year, back a month and a half ago at PPG Paints Arena, it was just 1-0. Malkin scored on a power play to give the Penguins the win there. But that was a game in which both goalies, Jari and Shesterkin, stood tall and made a pretty offensive game, I thought. That first matchup of the season looked like a defensive struggle, which it actually wasn't. But since then, these past 3 games have been troubling, haven't they? And I know no Sid tonight, no Marino tonight, no Raheem Zahorna, if you're a fan of his, which I am. But let's be honest, he didn't make that big of a difference being in or out. But over the course of the last 2 weeks, you'd have to say that the Rangers are better positioned in the playoffs if these two teams do meet. And it's always my conundrum this time of year is how much credence to lend to not just head-to-head matchups, but any games late in the season for a team like the Penguins that's not absolutely assured a playoff berth, but they're right there as far as percentages likelihood to make the playoffs. They're in the high 90s right now, so they're going to be in the postseason. And sometimes teams tend to coast, whether that's an intentional thing or whether that's just a human nature thing where you let off the gas pedal a little bit. And the Penguins did have a nice stretch just before this losing run, dropping 5 out of their past 7. You'll recall they won 5 out of 6. They beat a desperate Vegas team. They beat a good Carolina team at home. They beat St. Louis on the road in a shootout and took care of business against the Coyotes and the Blue Jackets. But since then, that dead-legged performance against Buffalo, that was understandable, back end of a back-to-back traveling to. But the 5-1 loss at New York, that was the start of this troubling trend, wasn't it? That was the first time that their attention to detail looked like it was falling off. I know Mike Sullivan has to be pulling his hair out a bit at this point because I know just before that stretch, this recent stretch of games, the last 7, that he was praising his team for being on their details, for being aggressively in on the forecheck. And as many folks have noted, including Jesse Marshall of The Athletic, the Penguins have to forecheck or they're not going to play well. It's not going to look good, or they're going to get burned by teams like the Rangers who can beat you off the rush, teams like the Avalanche who can beat you off the rush. We saw that a couple of times this past week. And Avs a great team. The Rangers appear to be a team on the rise too. Some good tests here, and the Penguins have gotten C's and D's in these tests in the last couple of weeks. So how much credence do you lend to it? I don't know how much credence you would lend to it. John Smith chimes in on the live chat. He says, at least Carolina versus Pittsburgh wouldn't be painfully boring like this. Shame they came back against Buffalo. So the Canes did come back. I'm just checking that score. Yes, they, last I checked, they were behind. But, yeah, they are ahead 4-3 with 6.5 minutes to go as I speak. The Hurricanes are on the Sabres. I don't know if these games against the Rangers are boring. Today was more tame, to use an adjective I heard on the broadcast today. There wasn't a lot of animosity until the very end, and yeah, so much of that is pretty cheap as far as I'm concerned. If you want to be fired up, if you want to be emotional, show it at the start of the game. Not at the end of the game, but we all know how it happens. When the result is out of the barn and everything is sealed up, then certainly things can get a little chippier and frustration can boil over, certainly, if you're the losing team. I thought the last couple of games against the Rangers were pretty entertaining, and the Rangers definitely like to go up and down the ice. So if you like fast hockey, I think that you would like a Penguins-Rangers series. Just the scores have been low. The Penguins haven't been scoring. That's the problem. That's why it hasn't been that exciting for Penguins fans, at least I think. I know the shot totals were down a little bit in this game too. So this game was an outlier, certainly. Gaming with Geo joins us here on the live chat. And Walt Flanagan, do want to mention, he had the one comment about the actual play on the ice. He said that it doesn't matter who they play. They're a first round easy out. Hey, I've seen that opinion certainly pop up more and more online these days, and I can't say that there's not evidence for some of that right now. I have a couple of folks who tweet me on a nightly basis, or at least a game night basis, that the Pens are finished, that nothing's going to happen, it's time to blow it up, they need to figure out a new way to do it. I'm not sure that's the right way to go. As long as Sidney Crosby's on the team and you have this opportunity here with him, I think you got to keep pushing. And I don't think moving on from a guy like Chris Letang, at least not giving him a fair offer this offseason because he hits free agency, I don't think that's going to help you get any better. I just don't see any kind of restructuring plan leading to another Stanley Cup run with Crosby. So you basically got to go with these guys. And you got to go with Evgeny Malkin. You've got to go with Chris Letang, in my opinion. I would bring him back. Absolutely, I would bring him back. Especially now that you look in the pipeline, and who do you have, really? You have P.O. Joseph, and that's about it defensively. And Brian Dumoulin, by all intents or by all evidence here this season, looks like he's on the decline. And he was never a fantastic defender in terms of driving play in the first place. He was always better in his own end than he was in the attacking end or in the neutral zone. And now he appears to have been playing, I think, his worst hockey as a Pen at the NHL level. So I don't think you can afford to let a guy like Letang go in the offseason. Gaming with Geo says, what is up with them giving up goals at the beginning of periods 2 and 3 lately? Also goals right after scoring. It's situational play focus. Yeah, that part of it does make me think that this is more of a mental thing, as it is an old team with weary legs at the end of the year. Do I think they could use some more rest? Probably. It's been a pretty brutal schedule lately, and it's not going to get any easier with 10 games left before the end of the month and before they rev up and get into the playoffs, presumably. So I think it is more of a mental fatigue or a mental laziness at times. Start of the period, end of the period, those are the times when you need to lock it down. Those are the times when it should be easier to lock it down, right? Because your attention should be focused more. And after goals, too, you should get a boost from scoring a goal, not sag, as we saw against Colorado in particular this past Saturday. Twice that happened to them. They could have easily gotten at least a point out of that game. And I said at the time, that game hurts. And not just because you don't want to lose a game in which you have a chance against one of the better teams in the league to send a message there, make a statement to not just the league, but also yourself that you can do it. But also because I knew they had the Rangers coming up again. I knew that they have the Predators, they have the Bruins, and they have the Islanders. Like I said, they're playing better lately too. So not getting much easier in the near future. And they're not in danger of missing the playoffs, but they are in danger of further sliding down the standings. And pending this result Saturday against Washington, they lose that in regulation, then they could possibly fall all the way down to 4th. I'm not sure if that means much of anything because it could still just be Carolina or New York. I don't think they would fall far enough to put them in jeopardy of playing the Florida Panthers in the first round in a crossover game. But I suppose anything's possible at this point. If they don't play well down the stretch, yeah, they could. Now that I look at it here, the Penguins have 92 points. So that's fewer than all 4 of the playoff teams in the Atlantic Division. So, in fact, they could, if they continue to fall off, they could end up playing the Panthers in a crossover game. But you know what? At this point, maybe I'd prefer that over playing possibly the Rangers in the first round. I don't know if it's a bad matchup or the Penguins have just played poorly in these games recently. Matt says hello. Also, Dale, he says boycott the Pirates. Can't disagree with that. I have been very disengaged with baseball during the spring training stretch and now the opening day. No offense to Mike Osti and Logan, who joined him for the Pittsburgh Postgame this afternoon for Pirates and Cardinals. So if you are a baseball fan, go check that out here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, but I'm not going to be talking about the Pirates. Matt says it'd be nice to see O'Connor back in the lineup soon. Yeah, we haven't seen much from OC, and I do think that it wouldn't be a bad thing to mix in some Wilkes-Barre call-ups here in the final few games. It hasn't been the best year for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. That's a franchise that typically is contending for a division championship. Not so much this year, but there are some interesting players. You've got an Alex Nylander down there, of course, too. I'm not saying that he deserves a jersey for the playoffs or anything, but with how they've struggled to finish, hey, anybody who has a glimmer, a twinkle of high-end talent, I think you probably should give them a shot at some point. And Dale also says, seems the Penguins' physical game, if I can interpret this comment, is not coming through. I think in terms of just their skating, they haven't looked quite as fresh recently, but that's pretty understandable considering how heavy the schedule has been. John Smith talking about Mike Matheson showing some desperation. I agree. He is playing hard. I want to mention some players like Evan Rodriguez, who I think continues to keep the pedal down despite his lack of scoring. You see him continuing to take the puck to the net. He tried a couple of stuff plays in this game. Had a really good shot, in fact, against Shesterkin in the first period that glanced off his blocker, maybe even the butt end of the stick. Danton Heinen had a really good opportunity that he put off Shesterkin's blocker. So remember, you're playing probably the best goalie in the league in these games against the Rangers, so that's a factor too. Jake Gensel, though, I don't know if it's lack of focus or just a rough stretch for him too, but two great chances, including an open net late in the third period. If he hits that, then it gets very interesting late, but if in one hand and you know what in the other, see which one fills up faster. Right now, it's been more the if for the Penguins with some of these opportunities they've been generating. Ricard Raquel, I think, had the most puck touches as a Penguin easily tonight. You see what happens when there's no Crosby. He gets more ice time, and I think he was impressive tonight. He showed limitless energy, but didn't get a lot of help from his teammates. I think it was a so-so game from Evgeny Malkin. His line had one pretty good shift where he was really dominant, and he had a couple of moments where he pulled away from pressure. But I think some of the adrenaline from his comeback is starting to wear off here. And when you have a team like the Penguins, so veteran in nature, and even though they haven't gone deep in the playoffs the last 3 years, we all know that, and I'll get to that in a moment, but they've done it all in the postseason in addition to the regular season over and over again. I do wonder if the focus does continue or does start to drop off and does continue to stay low if they fall into maybe a crisis of confidence here late in the regular season. Not what you want. The Penguins still with a record of 41, 20, and 10. They've still lost just, 15 times since the start of November. So still one of the better teams in the league, but now they've been surpassed easily by the Rangers, who have 6 more points than them at this point. So that happened in a hurry. Life comes at you fast when you lose in regulation 3 straight times to a team that you're neck and neck with in the standings. Someone on Twitter brought up a good comment, and I want to give him a shout out because I do struggle with this at this time of the year with what translates. Barry Nutbrand, the Burt, on Twitter. He says, "This is an extremely unpopular opinion right now, but you can't convince me that anything that happens in this game means anything other than seeding come playoff time. And even if it did, me as a fan being angry about it isn't going to change anything." Well, that whole chestnut we can dig into because at times this year I felt like fans were nitpicking the Penguins, and that's because of the 3 straight playoff defeats. If they had been coming off of back-to-back Stanley Cup championships like they were 3 years ago, then I think they'd get a little more leeway. But as we all know in this sport, it is not all about the playoffs. You still have to qualify in the regular season, but it is mostly about the playoffs, rightly or wrongly. And there's no need arguing that fact. So people are going to read the tea leaves however they want this time of year. And they're going to say, well, they're trending up, or they're trending down, they're screwed, or they're saving some in the tank if you want to look at an optimistic way. Or if they were winning all the time right now, as I tweeted the other day too, if they're winning 7 in a row right now, you'd still have folks saying, well, it doesn't mean anything because they haven't done it in the playoffs since 2018. The last time they won a postseason series was that first rounder against the Flyers. So I guess I get both perspectives because it's impossible to really tell. And in a game like tonight, I don't know what to do with it because you don't have Sidney Crosby, you don't have even a John Marino, who I've been kind of down on this year, but still undoubtedly one of your top 4 defensemen and a minutes eater and a player you rely upon. That's going to throw your allotment of time on ice on the back line out of whack when you're missing a guy like him for the first time this season. I should also mention that the Capitals have 2 games in hand on the Penguins, so maybe they're not locked in third place. Talking about the Penguins, of course. So the Penguins, even though they do have what you would call normally a busy schedule this time of the year, with 3 weeks to go roughly and 10 games left, they have fewer games left than a lot of the teams that are out there. So yeah, this is not over. This could very easily end up being a 4th place team in the Metro when it's all said and done. And I know they've played well for a long stretch of the season, but losing in regulation in the NHL, that's costly. You can lose in a shootout, you can lose in overtime, and still tread water, but they're just not even doing that right now. Walt Flanagan saying he feels called out and seen. Well, hey, it's your right to be angry if you want to be angry. That's fine. I would certainly agree. The last 4 years have been disappointing as a Penguins fan. and I'm not covering the team on a day-to-day basis like a journalist anymore, so I feel the emotions more. It's actually been nice to disconnect a bit from the team and not talk to the players all the time and not talk to the coaches all the time because some journalists don't want to admit it, but when you talk to people all the time, you start to get to know them, you start to root for them in a different way. And I think sometimes it's easier to go easy on players and teams when you're right in there, in the muck, in the trenches with them in certain aspects. So when you get further away from it, that's when you actually can see things with clearer eyes. At least I think at times. Dale asks, other than Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, what player must shine in the playoffs? I think you look to a player like Rickard Rakell, and he's got a couple of goals since coming over. Maybe hasn't poured in the points, but ideally he plays with Malkin. I think in a second line scenario there, you leave Rust and Gensel with Crosby. And so in that case, Malkin's going to need some help. He's going to need a guy to finish his passes, and he's going to need maybe a guy to carry the puck a little bit. We saw that from Rakell tonight. I think he can carry it, and maybe more effective on the receiving end than on the carrying end. But beggars can't be choosers sometimes. And the Penguins did have a nice addition there with Rakell. I hand it to Ron Hextall for sticking with it and getting that deal done. Jeff Carter, too, another player I'd point to. And certainly no fault of his own, but it appears that some of that buzz has worn off for him. And he's not a player that's going to dominate 20 minutes a night. But I think 15 minutes a night, somewhere around there, maybe 18 minutes a night, he can be very effective for you. So perhaps that means playing Teddy Bluger a little bit more and letting his younger legs take some of those minutes. Then again, both Bluger and Carter kill penalties. So if it's a special teams game, not that tonight was, but if it's a special teams game in the future, then you're going to have to lean more on Crosby and Malkin and perhaps just throw that caution to the wind and not have that level of depth that you hope you did. It's a shame that Rakell can't play center because he kind of looked like a center tonight with how much he had the puck. So as far as players to step up, I see players like that. I think Mike Matheson can still give more, and I feel that he is coming to his own more offensively. He's getting plenty of shots on net. I know that much. I wanted to look that up, in fact, tonight and see how many shots he ended up with because he was firing from all angles. And he's a player that has a surprisingly good shot. I never really considered him as a prime shooter and someone who can put a lot of pucks toward the net, but we're seeing that more and more. Yeah, Mike Matheson with 4 shots on net, plus 3 misses, and 2 of those were blocked as well. So Mike had 9 shot attempts. That was a Chris Letang-esque performance when it comes to volume, trying to get pucks toward the net, and I like seeing that a lot. Matheson played 18 minutes tonight, so we saw Letang at 25, Dumoulin at 21, with Marino out, 18 for Matheson, and then 16 for Pettersson and Ruedel, and 15 for Mark Friedman. And up front with Crosby out, let's see who got the brunt of that. You have Malkin with 20 minutes, Gensel and Rust 21 minutes, over 20 minutes for both of them. Rakell, Rodriguez, they both picked up the slack, it seemed like. Bluger played nearly 16 minutes too, and Jeff Carter was at 17-23. That's about the edge of Jeff Carter's effectiveness, I think. So honestly, the Penguins need Crosby and Malkin to play, continue to play at the level they've played at this season for most of the season when they've both been active. That's just what it comes down to. This isn't a team that can afford a major injury or anything like what we saw tonight when it's an illness that knocks a player out. But we all knew that. That's just the reality of being a star-based team. And most teams that win Stanley Cups or challenge for Stanley Cups are star-based teams. Dale also brings up Jari. Did want to mention nice bounce back for him. Gave up a couple of goals. Yeah, the third was an empty netter, of course. But both goals he gave up were the result of blown coverages. And I think he did a pretty fine job against some of those high-octane shooters the Rangers have. Players like Panarin and Zibanejad, Chris Kreider shooting at 20% this year. He finally missed the net, or maybe Jari got a piece of it late in the first period. I can't believe it. He didn't score on a grade A chance. That guy's going to get to 60 if he keeps up this pace, it feels like. So there's some of that on the Rangers, for sure. And how good are the Rangers? That's a question that I've been asking myself over the past couple of weeks, and I think it's relevant, especially if the Pens face them. I think it's a team that's on a heater a little bit right now, but they are playing better defensively. They're not relying so much on Igor Shesterkin. The Penguins didn't bomb the Rangers in shots in any of these past 3 games, and it hasn't been all Shesterkin, whose numbers, in fact, have dropped off a little bit over the past couple of weeks. but still a very solid goaltender, no doubt. But they're a lot based on goaltending. They're a lot based on good finishing. And guys like Zibanejad and Panarin and Kreider putting the puck in the net. If they can get Lafreniere ever going a little bit more, that would be big for them. Frankie Vetrano has, scored 7 goals already for the Rangers since the trade deadline or near it when he was acquired. So the Rangers have shot the lights out. They've gotten great goaltending. For me, it feels like a team that might at some point fall flat, and you'll be like, wow, they were knocked out of the playoffs in a hurry. I don't know if it's the Penguins that will be doing something like that, but they're riding a PDO heater. A PDO being, of course, save percentage and shooting percentage added up. Or at least they were for most of the year, but now looking more solid. So they're also getting confidence, I feel. And it's a team that's young. It could remind you of a younger Penguins team back in the day that plays fast, maybe not plays loose necessarily, but they're not the most airtight defensive team in the world, although the Penguins might disagree with how few goals they've scored. How about 1 even-strength goal in 4 games against the Penguins this season? Matt says, getting a healthy Zucker and McGinn back is a positive going into the playoffs. Yeah, McGinn to a smaller extent. I'm still a Jason Zucker supporter, and I think that he can add something to this team. If you got Malkin with Zucker and Raquel on his wings, I think those are 2 serious top lines for you. And we just haven't seen it that much. And we all know that the Penguins have suffered more injuries than most over the past 15 years, which makes it all the more amazing that they have won as many regular season games as they have. They're the top team in the NHL in regular season wins over the past 15 seasons. And a large part of that is due to the fact that, of course, you've got guys like Crosby and Malkin who can carry things for short spans of time or even longer spans of time earlier in their careers. Chris Letang, too. They've gotten, for the most part, pretty decent goaltending over the years. Fleury came on late in his Penguins tenure. He was one of the top goalies in the league by the time he was dealt away. And Tristan Jarry has goaltended well for, 2 of his 3 seasons in Pittsburgh here. So it's not all because of good depth, but depth players do come up big for them in the regular season at least. And when they've won in the playoffs, you've seen third lines carry the load. I'm not sure if you're going to see a Jeff Carter-centered third line be as big as the HBK, certainly, or the Jordan Staal-centered third line from back in the day, from the late 2000s, previous decade. Actually, that's 2 decades ago now. And now I feel very old when talking about this team. But here we are 15 years later and still talking about this team as a serious Stanley Cup contender, even though, as I've said, rough stretch for sure. It's been difficult to watch at times, and other times it's been maybe feeling like that they're only a break or a bounce away from breaking out of this funk. We saw that against Colorado on that Saturday, especially that Saturday game. But even the game at home against Colorado, that wasn't as big of a spread as it appeared to be. It's just these Rangers games that have been very discouraging. And since we know what the playoff format is like, for the most part, unless you drop further down and then you cross over, you're going to have to play the Rangers probably at some point or another if you want to make a deep run in the playoffs. All right, we've reached the 30-minute mark. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the start of the show. Any other comments? I can certainly vamp for another couple of minutes if anyone else wants to take a shot at Talking Penguins right now on Pittsburgh Postgame. Actually, a great time to remind you that you can like and subscribe. We suggest you like and subscribe to Pittsburgh Sports Live. We'll be talking hockey a lot more down the stretch. Like I said, 10 games to go in the regular season, and then the playoffs. All 3 years I've done these shows in the playoffs, though, they haven't been long runs. I haven't done more than 1 round in each of the past spring times, as we all well know. And as you see, there's my name right at the top of the screen, Matt Gajtka. And you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook, Matt Gajtka Media on Facebook, in fact. That's my professional account. I'm not sure how professional it really is, but it's my my account where I talk sports and discuss things that aren't about my kids. I'm not sure how much anybody can take of all that. I know when I see other people's kids' photos and, the anecdotes about being a parent, if it's not your kid, do you really care? I don't know. I think if you are a parent, you do a little bit more than if you aren't. All right, last question here from Dale Zegarelli. Dale, you've been most prolific. You're saying the Penguins have become the premium Pittsburgh professional sports team. How long will it last? Well, it may just be another couple of years, and then we could be in for some lean times. Or, who knows, the Penguins could get lucky, win the draft lottery, and get a game changer like a Connor Bedard or someone like that in the future. Not saying they're going to drop that far down the standings in the very near future, but I didn't think this year was going to be that great, and here they are, still challenging for at least, I guess, home ice in the first round. Now this slump has kind of turned that narrative around, hasn't it? It's made it more about, well, let's just get some semblance of good form back under our belts before we get into the playoffs here, because the last 2 weeks have been discouraging. I know that much, and I understand if folks out there are frustrated. Hopefully, the Penguins get Crosby back for this matchup against Washington, 3 o'clock, another national TV game on ABC. And, well, Crosby is not too far behind Alex Ovechkin now for total points, despite playing, almost 200 games fewer than Alex Ovechkin over the course of his career. That'd be a nice feather in his cap. Maybe we could see a big outburst from Sid if he gets back to health. Not that I want him to rush. This is not the time of the year to rush back from anything, whether it be injury or illness or whatever it may be. Gaming with Gio reminds that the Penguins and the Steelers have been good about first-round exits lately. So, yeah, those are your two premier Pittsburgh sports franchises. Hey, the Riverhounds are making a run at it, too. So, take a look at them in the USL Championship, second tier of soccer in the USA. It's certainly not the Pirates, though. We can agree on that. But you know what? The Penguins and the Steelers are there every year. And Gio says not so premium in the playoffs, but it's hard to be there every year in these salary cap leagues. Of course, the Steelers have had, or they did have, a top-of-the-line quarterback for 17 seasons, 18 seasons, I think it was, with Ben Roethlisberger. That certainly helps in the NFL. The Penguins have had two of the best centers in the league, one of the best players of all time in Sidney Crosby, one of the best 100 players of all time, and Yevgeny Malkin, as Mike Sullivan often reminds. So if you're going to have a great player at a position in hockey, you'd have him at center. And there was some luck involved in the draft lottery and all that. But those two teams have built on that, and they're consistently in the playoffs at the very least. And in a cap league, I'm not sure how much more you can really ask. And who knows, in 2 months, we could be saying, wow, the Penguins, they went from 3 and out, or 3 first-round playoff exits in a row, 4 and out in each of the past 3 years. I guess it was 3 and out against Montreal in the play-in round. Neither here nor there. COVID year maybe doesn't quite count as much. But they went from that to another deep run in the playoffs. I still think this group has one more deep run left in them. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic. Maybe I have got my fan hat on too much. But I don't think so. I really do believe that they've got one more kick at the can. They can squeeze some more juice out of this orange and give us one more deep run into the summertime. Why don't you, Penguins? Because heaven knows the Pirates aren't going to keep us occupied in any kind of positive fashion. All right, that's it for me. Next show could be Saturday. Not going to promise it right now, but if you do subscribe to Pittsburgh Sports Live, you know when we're going live, and I'll be tweeting about it if I am doing a show like I did tonight. It's been a lot of fun chatting with all of you. A great lively chat, despite the loss for the Pens. Sometimes the losses can bring out the comments more than the wins. Isn't that funny how that works? I suppose that's just human nature. Looking at the schedule down the line, the Penguins play the Predators on Sunday at 4 o'clock. Actually, that Saturday is looking more likely to be a Pittsburgh Postgame type of a day, because I'm playing golf on Sunday, and I'm also watching the Masters final round on Sunday. Not sure I'm going to be paying too much attention to the Preds and the Penguins. Hey, it's a regular season, so I guess I can afford to disengage for just a little bit. 1 under for Tiger Woods. He's back, baby. And so is Pittsburgh Postgame. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.